Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. A few months back I reviewed a wonderful game called Stalagbite. If you missed that review, I do recommend checking it out because Stalagbite turned out to be a surprise hit and one of my favourite games of 2024 so far. I will put a link in the video description below. Stalagbite uses custom wooden meeples, which are rather lovely, but if you want to, you can purchase an upgrade set of official metal miniatures which add a pleasing Oldhammer aesthetic to proceedings. I was fortunate enough to receive a set of these miniatures as a gift from the designers of Stalagbite, Midlam Miniatures, and in between other projects I have started working through painting them. Which brings us to the point of today's video. We are painting the titular Stalagbites. A Stalagbite is basically a sentient cyclopean stalagmite with horrible teeth. They blend into their rocky surroundings and then ambush unsuspecting prey. That being the case, to paint them I wanted to at least roughly emulate the colour palette of the beautiful board tiles. That means I'm using a sort of orangey brown. And just so you know, I did a test paint job on a single Stalagbite, and when I decided I was happy with it, I batch painted the rest in a single sitting. The miniature I'm using in the video is the level 2 giant Stalagbite, and besides this fella you get 6 regular Stalagbites and then a single gold Stalagbite, which I obviously painted differently and will show at the end. To start, I spray undercoated the miniatures with Chaos Black. This is going to provide a good foundation to paint on and will help to give us some dark recess shading, which is going to be a big part of the style I'm going for. When that's dry, I am going to use Balor Brown. I hardly ever use Balor Brown, so it was nice to have an excuse to get it out, and it does prove why it's always handy to have lots of paint on the shelf, even colours you rarely need. And I'm going to use this to completely coat the Stalagbite. Balor Brown is a layer paint, so it will require 2 coats, maybe even 3, because I am going to thin the paint a little more with some water to ensure I get a really smooth finish and don't clag up any of the details. When it's completely dry, it looks pretty horrible, but we will sort that out the best way I know how. With Agrax Earthshade, I am going to absolutely pile this onto the miniature. I am putting loads on and I want a lot of it to sit in the recesses, way more than I normally would. I also want enough going around that eyeball to make it look like the Stalagbite has eyeliner on. And when that is completely dry, crikey, this looks even worse than before. And that is okay, by the way. Often I find, at least when you are doing hack jobs like me, a miniature will look worse before it looks better. Often it's only with the last few layers and the last bit of detail work that it all pulls together. So be brave and stay the course. We move on. To Balor Brown, it's time to start dry brushing. I am going to use a decent sized brush, load it up with paint, wipe most of the paint off on a kitchen towel, and then lightly flick the brush over the miniature. This will leave a coating of paint on the most raised details, and for these miniatures I am mainly working from the top of the miniature and drawing the brush down. This will ensure most of the paint hits the top surfaces, which would naturally be exposed to more light. However, I do also drag the brush from the bottom to the top sometimes, just to really ensure the ridges pop and to help blend the transition between highlight and recess shading. When that first dry brush is completely dry, which won't take long, I'm going to add a really small amount of skeleton bone from Army Painter to the brown. Any bone colour will do, although creamier, darker shades are best. And with that mix I am going to do another dry brush, this time only working from the top down, and making sure I focus more on the top half of the Stalagbite, from around the mouth up. And I'm going to repeat that process several times. Each time I will add another drop of the skeleton bone to the Balor Brown, and each time I will do a lighter dry brush, focusing more and more towards the spike at the top of the Stalagbite. And you can do as many layers as you want. I did 3, and that was more than enough. Next I am going to paint the little toes using Zandri Dust. I love Zandri Dust. It's a base paint, so a little thicker than the Balor Brown, and even thinned with water you can probably get away with a single coat on these toes. And you don't have to be too fussy here, try to avoid getting it on the main body of the Stalagbite, but if you do get a little overspill, it's not the end of the world. Stalagbites are made of rock and would have natural variances in their coloration. With the pedicure done, we are going back to Agrax Earthshade, and I am being heavy-handed with it again. I am slopping it on the toes, making sure it goes right into the recesses. Then I will go back to the Zandri Dust, thin it right down, and apply a highlight on those toes. Next, I'm going to use some Marrow White from the P3 range. Steamforged Games sent me a sample of some of their new P3 paints, and Marrow White was the one paint I have really fallen in love with. It's a brilliant white, and it works so well for very cartoony paint styles. I am going to use it here on the eyeball and also any exposed teeth. I'm thinning it slightly and applying it very carefully to ensure I leave a bold recess all around the eye. I want my Stalagbites to be goths. And when it's done, I think it looks amazing. That white really pops and gives these Stalagbites more of an animated style, which is exactly what I wanted. Of course, the eyes aren't quite finished yet. I need to grab my ABNB black, thin it down, load up a brush, and then just make a single round dot on the eye for a pupil. I always recommend painting eyes so they are looking off to one side slightly. It makes the miniature look more natural, like it's actually focusing on something rather than staring blankly into the void. At this point we are pretty much done, we just need to finish the base. I want to get some texture on there, but I can't be bothered to mess around with glue and grit, so I am going to use Astro Granite from Games Workshop. It's a texture paint that dries to form bumpy, uneven surfaces. Now, normally when painting a base, it's a good idea to use a colour that has a bit of contrast with the miniature. You want the miniature to stand out, not get lost in its surroundings. However, Stalagbites are supposed to be part of their rocky surroundings, so I am going to do the bases in Balor Brown. I am going to completely coat the Astro Granite and get a coat on the rim of the base as well. Then I want to add some shading, so I am using Seraphim Sepia. This is a more yellowy shade than Agrax, so the base will look ever so slightly different from the coloration of the Stalagbite. When that's completely dry, I'm going to do a Balor Brown dry brush on the surface of the base, and then I will add a drop of skeleton bone and do one final highlight before painting the rim in a solid coat of Balor Brown. And that is that. Finished Stalagbites. And I am really pleased with how these turned out. The miniatures are absolutely lovely anyway, and with the cartoonish paint job, I think they really come to life. I liked the custom meeples that came in the Stalagbite game, but these miniatures will take it to another level. Best of all, it didn't take long to do this at all. There was no fiddly work to do, even the eyes and teeth are quite large so you can do them quickly as long as you have a moderately steady hand. Washes and dry brushing do most of the heavy lifting, and that stuff is dead easy. But what about that special gold Stalagbite? I did it in pretty much the same way. I started with a black base coat, but I used Balthazar Gold instead of Balor Brown. I applied 2 coats of that to make sure it was smooth and had covered the base thoroughly. Then, when it was dry, I used Seraphim Sepia for the shade. The yellowy coloration of the shade works well on golds. And again, I went very heavy with that shade. Then it was a case of doing a very heavy dry brush with the Balthazar Gold, focusing mainly on moving the brush down from the top of the miniature. After that, I did a final dry brush with the significantly brighter Retributor armour, and that really helped to define the ridges and emphasise the goldness of this special Stalagbite. From there on, it was all the same as with the other Stalagbites: Marrow White and ABNB black for the eye, Zandri Dust and Agrax Earthshade for the toes, and then Balor Brown and Seraphim Sepia for the base, with a final coat of Retributor armour around the rim of the base to help it stand out even more. I am going to be using different coloured base rims for all of the different enemy types and for the 6 different dwarves, so it made sense to make this special Stalagbites base golden. And again, I'm very happy with that. And very happy to have another set of miniatures cleared off the painting queue. As always, I spray varnished everything with Army Painter matte varnish, and now these guys are ready to start causing a nuisance in the caverns. But they aren't the only threats our brave dwarves will face. What will I be painting next? Keep an eye out for more Stalagbite painting videos over the coming weeks, because that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.